With polls going in today's California primary, Intuit showing Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders statistically tied. The Associated Press reporting based on the superdelegate support, Hillary Clinton hit the critical number 2,383 delegates needed, making her the first woman in our nation's 240-year history to become the presumptive nominee of a major American political party. Yet while basking in the news of her historic first, Sanders is not bowing out. Of course not. Clinton reminding her supporters to get out and vote.
I got to tell you, according to the news, we are on the brink of a historic, unprecedented moment. But we still have work to do, don't we? We have 6 elections tomorrow, and we're going to fight hard for every single vote, especially right here in California.
Yeah, but they were still lining up. Bernie Sanders before a 10,000-plus crowd in San Francisco, promising a win in California would give him the momentum to take his fight all the way to the convention in Philadelphia. And later, the senator from Vermont explained why he won't be falling behind Hillary Clinton anytime soon.
I think it is premature for any endorsement. It is up to the people to make that decision, and it is clear. This is not me talking. It is the Democratic National Committee that says do not lump together pledged delegates, real delegates, with superdelegates who may or may not change their minds.
How much do you think Bernie Sanders is kicking himself for not talking about some of the stuff in Hillary Clinton's past, like the email server, so on and so forth? He gave her a lot of passes early on, and now he's looking at this.
He didn't. This week he even talked about her foreign policy being a lot more like George W. Bush's, for example, which is a very legitimate attack line, by the way, when you look at what she did in Libya and Syria. Sure, of course, too late. And I think for Sanders, though, he touches on this, and anyone who doesn't understand this has not been paying attention. I don't think he even is focused as much on the nomination as much as on the movement he has created. This is a battle for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party, not just a nomination. And he knows that Hillary Clinton has been eager to shift abruptly back to the center. Progressives have been disappointed, frankly, in Barack Obama, not in their view. Certainly, I don't agree with this, but not in their view being progressive and effective enough. So what he's trying to do is make sure that he doesn't give her any opportunity, any room to just become essentially a centrist and completely neglect the issues he cares about, obviously, as far as the environment, as far as minimum wage and economic inequality.
All right, so former President Bill Clinton on Sunday called him toast heading into today. Yeah. Interesting. But Sanders then said yesterday to a reporter that he's going to assess the path after California. So he's, I guess, maybe done, even if he goes to Philadelphia. But my question is, did she win or did he just lose? There's a difference.
Yeah, well, I think toast made her work. I mean, you know, Bill Clinton's calling him toast. Well, he's made Hillary Clinton have to face a challenger. She was unchallenged. That's how she likes it. She feels like she's entitled to this job, and she can just roll out, and because she's Hillary Clinton, and she can say, well, I would be the first woman president, everyone's supposed to get behind her. This is the second time now that someone has basically popped up out of nowhere and said, oh, really? So I think it's been really interesting. I think you're right about the movement. I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to make it, if that's what you're asking. But I think that he has played a really significant role. And I don't think that a lot of those Bernie Sanders supporters are going to go for Hillary Clinton, because she represents that everything that they hate about politics. And Bernie Sanders represents everything that they love, which is someone who's honest, who gets out there, who talks like a real person.
Correct.
And some say some of those voters might go to Trump. I'm not so sure. I think they're going to stay home, though. And I think that if she does win, you're going to see it by a very small margin, because a lot of people really can't stand her, especially in academia. And California, if she loses California, oh, that's a disaster for her regardless.
Julie, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, let's not forget, she won California 8 years ago, and by a sizable margin, by a much larger margin than she is going to either win or lose today. And so it didn't matter, ultimately. Barack Obama ultimately won the primary, clearly, in very much the same way that she's about to win it now, and then went on to unify the party. Now, look, consistently we've seen this. We saw this with the Never Trump movement, which is basically Mitt Romney with 3 guys in a bunker now. That's collapsed. And I think we're going to ultimately see this be, the Never Hillary movement on the Democratic side is going to collapse too.
But here's what's key. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say is Bernie Sanders, however, has a job to do, which is if he's serious about defeating Donald Trump, and he says that's his top priority, he has got to, after today, because after today he knows there's really no pathway, he's got to come out and say, okay, fine, I did my best.
But it has to be him, right, Emac,
yes,
because she can't court those Bernie supporters. He's got to give them up.
Yeah, that's right. And the Clintons were so nervous about it that they scheduled something like 30 events in California in the last 5 days. Here's what's key. Young immigrant voters. And also, some studies suggest 1 in 4 Californians, that's what I'm talking about there, are not affiliated with any political party. They would have to ask for a Democratic ballot in order to vote. So the swing voter is key here if the independents come out. And if the turnout is suppressed because people could say, all right, she is a presumptive nominee, I'm just not going to come out to vote. And then the separate thing is if Sanders swings Hillary so far left, she starts saying yes to a $15 minimum wage and does things like that to get the Sandinistas still in her wing, because she's now just for things like a $12 minimum wage.
He's already won that argument. I mean, Bernie Sanders has basically taken Hillary Clinton so far to the left that she never wanted to go there. And I think it's a lot bigger, Julie. You know, Barack Obama was a dynamic, historic candidate. When he emerged from that process, I think there was a lot of momentum and enthusiasm in the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton was supposed to have a coronation, and now she's essentially hobbling to the finish. She's going to have lost 20 of the last 25 states in these kind of primary and caucus contests. And this argument that I think Democrats really need to understand, because we learned it the hard way through our primary process, is there is an angry electorate.
No question.
And that electorate does not want a establishment figure leading them into an election. So she's going to have to figure out a way, to your point, Jedediah, not just get these voters not to vote for Donald Trump, but to vote at all.
And I'll tell you how she's going to do that real quickly. She's going to do it in the following way. You saw her doing that with her foreign policy speech. You may not like me, I may not be your cup of tea, but look at this guy over here.
So she's going to make it personal rather than about policy, is what you're saying.
I think she wants to make it about policy.
So let's just talk some hard fact numbers. 2/3, 66% of Sanders voters say that they will vote for Clinton more as an anti-Trump vote than a pro-Clinton vote. Now, I didn't say 66% of all of them will vote for her. I said those who say they will vote for her, 66% of them say that they'll do it more as an anti-Trump than a Hillary Clinton. But it still only counts for Clinton. So it's interesting. People may not support her, and I do kind of see it changing a little bit, but it's still not everybody. As you said, there's still a chunk that are still sitting out there.
She's going to have to spend the rest of her time picking on Donald Trump instead of defending herself.
Does that make him bigger?
Well, you know, it depends what she does. If she talks about how he's a misogynist, if she talks about how he doesn't like Hispanics, or he's not helping the situation in some regard.
Right. The last couple of days in the cycle
that's true.
What he
but
said.
she can't defend herself. And Bernie Sanders has now brought up the Clinton Foundation and these donations to countries that have dictatorships, that are anti-gay, that are anti-woman. So she now has to, even if Bernie Sanders doesn't make it, he has planted the seed in people's minds of who she really is. Despite what she's saying, they now look at her record, they look at what she actually has accomplished, which is nothing. A lot of the stuff that she has done has turned out in a disaster, a la Libya. So I think his job is well served. And what people are going to see is look at Hillary and say, why doesn't she have anything positive to say about her own agenda? Why are you picking on this guy all the time? What about you?
It's an interesting observation, though, particularly with Libya, because President Obama just said that it's his regret out of his presidency, which is interesting because wouldn't it be hers too?
Yeah.
But here's the difference. The difference is, again, and Tony, you and I both do elections. We know this. You don't run in a vacuum. It's not that she's running to, against nobody. She's running against somebody. That somebody also supported going into Libya and taking out Muammar Gaddafi. That somebody also supported going into Iraq and launching a war there. That's somebody's Donald Trump, who has said all sorts of horrific things that have given pause, and we'll talk about it later, not just to Democrats and independents, but even many Republicans, including the leadership in the House and the Senate. So, again, all she has to do is to say to people, maybe I'm not your cup of tea, hold your nose. Yeah, remember who I'm running against.
I would say this, and Tony, I think you probably would step in on this too. Donald Trump was not a politician at the time. And what he's talking about with a precision strike, I've only heard him say recently against Muammar Gaddafi, but interesting observation.
Yeah, he wasn't the Secretary of State, and she was, and she's going to have to live by those decisions. She has no rationale, and her entire campaign is going to be to villainize Donald Trump as a result.